Now, children at a primary school in the West Midlands have been told to stop using slang words from their Black Country dialect to halt what the school has called a decline in standards. Phrases on the prohibited list include, and excuse my pronunciation, I can't do that, meaning I can't do that, and it wore me, meaning it wasn't me. Now, some parents support the ban at Collie Lane Primary School in Halesowen, but others claim it is snobbish and insulting.
I think it's disgusting trying to teach them how to talk and they've been brought up to talk the way they speak.
I think in the classroom it doesn't help with reading and writing and grammar.
I think we should be proud of our Black Country language. I think it's the best and we're friendly.
Because of the Black Countryisms that we all use, which is fine, it makes it difficult for them to spell the words out as they should be.
I think they should be allowed to do whatever they want to talk, as long I can talk properly if I want to.
Some different views there. Well, poet and one-time Brummie himself, Benjamin Zephaniah, is a firm fan of slang. Here's his Sunday stand.
You cannot control the English language. It is an ever-evolving entity that cannot be tamed. No matter how you feel or how frustrating it can be, language will not behave in the way we want. So let's stop worrying or censoring, accept that we will never control it, and instead celebrate its freedom. Attempts by some schools to ban slang is a kind of linguistic fascism. What kids may suppress in the classroom will only burst out in the corridors. I understand the concerns that some have, and I acknowledge that the scale of change seems to be growing. Maybe it's down to immigration, maybe it's that class thing, but nothing will stop it, so embrace it. As long as you have a basic understanding of the language and good grammar, the rest is open to change. Of course, class or class has a huge part to play in this debate. The Queen's English, as it is called, is only really spoken by the ruling classes. They don't seem to have accents. They were all educated in the same way, so they sound the same wherever they live. Whereas the working classes of Britain have strong regional accents and slang. So historically, those that use slang were looked down upon. And if we are really honest, it's still like that today. The English language will change as the country changes. It always has done, and it always will do. Protectionism is futile. Once you've accepted that, you will understand why this island language has such a truly global appeal. And that's groovy. No, that's wicked. No, that's splendid.
Benjamin can definitely talk proper when he wants to. Do you agree with him? You can take part in the debate by webcam or make your point by phone, text, email or online. Vicky, should slang be banned in schools?
Well, I have to say I really disagree with Benjamin. I do think slang is great, but I think that educating kids is actually about teaching them about context, about appropriacy, about equipping them to navigate different social situations. And I think slang is a personal preference. I guess in an ethical, theological terms, you could say it's almost a little bit about selfishness and unselfishness. There will be times for all of us when we need to modify the way we express ourselves. We can't always operate in our comfort zone. And I think kids need to be taught that they will come across a whole diverse body of people and situations in life where they have to actually step outside that comfort zone. So I guess for me it's a bit like the gears in learning to drive. You know, you need lots of different gears to navigate lots of different terrain. It doesn't minimise or lessen second gear that you have fifth gear. You know, you're not relegating, it's not fascism. Okay. You just need to know what's appropriate.
Just before you reply, Benjamin, it's worth pointing out the head teacher said, you know, all the staff here from that school where they're banning it, all the staff here from the Black Country, there are times when we need to use formal language, when we're presenting, when we're writing a letter, those sorts of things. It's to get the best possible results from our children. This is not an attack on local culture. You know, but they feel they need it.
I want to use a different metaphor.
Yeah.
Well, it's not a metaphor, it's a true story. Somebody I know bought a very expensive painting by somebody who's very well known. And it stood on the wall for a while, and then it started to peel off because they didn't, and I'm not a painter, they didn't know how to treat the base and the canvas and how to prime it and all that stuff. So they didn't know the basics about painting. It's important to understand, to know the basics of language. I'm not saying you shouldn't teach that. You should teach good grammar. You should teach how the language works. Once you understand how the language works, it's great, because it helps you understand other languages. I speak a little bit of Urdu, I speak some Chinese,
I bet you do.
because I understand language. But if you only stuck to the language and you banned slang and regional accents, you wouldn't get poetry, you wouldn't get music, all the literature that we're so proud of. You wouldn't. You know, you'd ban that Polish guy for speaking with a Polish-Scottish accent.
Is it that, Angela? Is there something about trying to make everyone talk the same way? You know, a kind of linguistic fascism, and saying you can't even, you know, sending letters home to say you shouldn't be using these phrases?
I mean, I really take issue with the whole use of the word fascism if we're going to talk about what words mean, because there's a kind of eagerness to jump on this definition and use it whenever anything is banned or it's not really accepted. The fact is that we're an island nation. We have linguistic influences from every point of the compass. But in school, it is a dereliction of an educationalist's duty to not equip children with the gold standard of grammar. We don't want to release poor spellers into the world who will not be able to advance themselves through education. They have to know about basic literacy. Now, slang can be a beautiful thing. It can be poetic, but they have to learn about context. So if they're writing, then they need to be taught, they need to be taught that use inverted commas, use it in direct
Vicky's made that point too.
But I'm not saying you don't do that. But you don't ban slang. I'm not saying you don't do that. I'm saying it is important to understand how language works.
Outside of school, though,
because you said it will burst out in the corridor. Isn't the idea that they just have to... Maybe it's a burden only on people outside of the southeast, that they have to kind of separate their regional dialect from RP, received pronunciation.
You know, we have to be careful not to mix up accents with slang. They're two slightly different things.
But in this case, they seem to be connected, don't they? It's about how people speak locally.
Sometimes people connect them. But, you know, studies have shown that most young people know when it's appropriate to use different types of language.
And aren't the teachers saying that they don't, and that's why they need to help them?
Well, if they don't, they do need to teach them better. And I love teachers. This is not a slur against teachers. I love teachers. Teachers and nurses are my heroes. But I do think once you teach them the basics, you can say, right, you know, you can... If you're showing them literature, you're going to have to explain what Shakespeare was doing, because that was a certain kind of accent, a certain kind of slang.
Sure. I actually just want to bring in Ryan Gester, who joins us via webcam from Dudley in the West Midlands, because you know we've got this issue we just want to clear up. Is this about regional dialect slang as opposed to accent? You know, is there a point there, Ryan, that you do need to be able to separate off the way you speak locally from formal English for formal situations and letters and things?
Oh, definitely. You know, I think it does all depend on context and the situation that you are in, as has just been said in the studio. And I think we do pick up multiple forms of language through our socialisation as we're growing up. But it's all about the way we adapt and adjust instinctively depending on the situation itself.
Can you give me, dare I say, a couple of examples of slang where you can see why the school might want to ban them and, you know, what the problem with them is?
Well, on their list, like it says, a few, they called them damaging phrases, which I personally don't see them as damaging. It's just part of our dialect. But like I could do that, and I ain't gonna do that. You know, it's just the way we speak around here, and you know, people should be proud of the background and the roots. And an accent and a dialect is all part of your identity, and identity and being unique is key to an individual.
Okay, thank you very much. Lindsay Johns joins us now. You teach young people in Peckham in South London, I gather, the difference between standard English and slang. Now, if we're talking about, you know, sort of youth speak as opposed to a regional accent, I just think how many politicians are always trying to street up the way they talk? Why do young people have to be told you shouldn't talk the way you talk naturally?
Good morning. Well, whether you like it or not, in the society in which we live, language is power. And I tell my young people that words are the best weapons they can have in their mental arsenal. At Leaders of Tomorrow, we have a zero-tolerance policy to street slang, because the sad truth is, street slang makes the young people who use it sound as if they've had an exceedingly painful frontal lobotomy. With all the innits, basically, you get me bloods. It makes them sound stupid and uneducated.
Hang on, no, wait, you said stupid. Why does it make them sound stupid? Is that not a judgment being put on them unfairly?
I don't think so. The reality is young people's educational opportunities and job prospects are directly affected by the way they choose to speak.
Exactly.
Now, I want the young people I mentor to be taken seriously when they interact with those in our society who have the power to make decisions which can affect their lives. For example, in college, university, and job interviews. Now, in an ideal world, there should be only two things that we're judged on: the caliber of our minds and the content of our hearts. But unfortunately, we don't live in an ideal world. And the better you speak, the more that people in positions of authority and power will take you seriously. And for me, this is the key. Street slang is spectacular self-sabotage because it renders young people unintelligible to, and therefore often unemployable by, mainstream adult society.
Lindsay,
it leads to marginalisation, disenfranchisement, and ultimately the dole queue.
You've raised so many interesting points. I want Benjamin to respond to those first. Self-sabotage.
When I was young, street slang was survival. I mean, we wanted conversations that we wanted to exclude people, we wanted to include people. It's what young people do. I got to stress again, I am not against young people having a good education and understanding the language, but to actually ban slang, you have to teach them where it's appropriate. You cannot, and I don't know if you like music at all, but you cannot make music sounding like the Queen. The only person that speaks the Queen English is the Queen and a few of her friends. The rest of the country is full of regional accents.
Take that on briefly, Vicky.
And that's the beauty of Britain.
Is it about class? Is it about everyone has to ape the way that a minority talk? Because they're in charge?
I think it's about everybody sacrificing. And like we've said, the English language actually does grow and flex. You know, we've just seen the word selfie added to the dictionary this week. You know, it's a language that does include, but we have to move together and we have to lay down our own preferences. I think it's interesting that you said that some of it is exclusive. Special interest language can actually leave people feeling quite on the outside. So, you know.
I'll bring in a second, Angela. I just want to bring in one other webcammer, who's Jonathan Green, who's a slang lexicographer and author. You've written your own Green's Dictionary of Slang. Now, it's one thing having this love of it, but we're talking about real people's lives potentially being affected if, as Lindsay Johns is saying, they don't have the articulacy of, you know, people who speak a different kind of standard English.
I mean, Benjamin has said virtually everything that I could say, possibly better. I mean, what slang is about, it's a register of the English language. It is like dialect, like technical, like received pronunciation, posh language, BBC, whatever. It's just one more type. James Murray, who was the first editor of the Oxford Dictionary, made this clear in 1884. It's always been clear. And of course, you know, I know, for what it is worth, 1,740 different slang words for lovemaking.
Please don't use them now at 10:30 on Sunday morning.
I wouldn't recite them in a formal interview. And as Benjamin said so rightly, if you go into a formal interview, if you don't know how to behave in that context, then you have to be taught. But it has nothing whatsoever to do with slang.
OK, thank you. Angela?
I mean, I can't bear this whole hair shirt snobism sort of approach to the whole discussion about the fact that somehow if people speak proper English, it means that they're somehow better than other people. We have to also accept that in this day and age, children's linguistic and literary influences are being hammered by the advent of social media. So they're learning text speak, they're learning how to speak on Facebook, the art of conversation is dying, they hardly read books anymore. And all of those issues are going to have an impact on their literacy. And literacy, as I said before, is the passport to self-advancement and to making something of yourself in the world. Now, because they're going to be hammered on all sides, because they only know how to converse with through digital media and how to sort of reduce words, not spell them properly, we're talking about schools arming them with the tools that they need. And they have to understand that if banning slang in the lesson is going to be one way of advancing that knowledge of the standard English, then so be it. It doesn't mean that out in the corridor there's going to be somebody policing them and say, oi, did you just say call love? Sorry, that's 10 lines
You're totally right.
It depends on what the lesson is about. Why can't the lesson be about slang?
OK, but in the that's context. OK, so you're arguing against yourself. That's context. If you can use it as part...
I said context before. I said context is really important. Context is very, very, really important. If you are teaching a novel where somebody's got some dialogue and they use slang, are you going to ban the novel? Are you going to ban that chapter?
No, the English language is very
I want to bring in a couple of comments here from viewers. Christabel says some dialects can be pretty impenetrable outside their own locality. It's not about class, it's about being understood. Karen says we should not use language that excludes others, whether it's slang or overly formal. And Jemima says kids are bright enough to know the difference between slang and talking proper. You'll not stop them doing it. And Dennis says teach English properly in schools, but let local accents be retained and used as they are part of the colour of our English heritage.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much indeed.